Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being patient in the chat. It's so nice to meet everybody. My name's Shane. Hello, hello. Good morning. Awesome. Super excited about the session today. We're going to do some Scratch programming, and I have a really cool project to share with everybody that we can use as like a foundation to make other cool projects in the future as well. Yeah, I have a few minutes here to make sure everyone has joined before we get started, so there's no rush there. I just wanted to say hello. Oh, nice. You just made a game? I'll keep the chat open the whole time. So if you ever have any questions, if I'm going too fast, anything like that, just throw it in the chat. I'll be sure to see that and adjust to your feedback. You Scratch a lot? That's awesome. It's amazing. I love Scratch. Ooh. Awesome. So a lot of different places in Nova Scotia. I'm in Halifax myself. Yeah, Cape Breton, Amherst, Dartmouth, all representing. My pronouns are he and him. I'll wait for everybody to be here and I'll do a proper introduction so you also know a little bit more about my background. Fredericton, nice. Another province. Ontario, cool. We're making the cross-country connection today. This is super exciting. I think I'll give it 2 more minutes and then we'll get a slow rolling start at around 9:05. Awesome, already know what you're gonna do when you grow up. That's super awesome. I think it's a great field, being computer science. It's a really cool field too, because even when you work not in computer science, there will still be opportunities for you to use those skills. You know, if you're doing anything like working at a shop or anything, maybe you could automate something and make it easier for yourself. I'll make sure to go really slow into the early concepts in Scratch for anybody that is totally new to it, to make sure that we all have a good understanding of what we're going to get up to today. I also have, you know, just examples of our finished product so that we have our target in terms of what we're aiming to. I think math is what you make it, you know? there's a lot of different kinds of math, and sometimes the way math makes us feel in class isn't exactly what we'll be doing in our lives. So there's a lot of different types. Arborist, that's exciting. Okay, so it is 9:05, which means I'm just going to kind of get started here. So as I mentioned briefly, my name is Shane Mitrovitz. I use the pronouns he and him. I currently live in Halifax, and I work for Supernova as a program assistant on the computer science team. I graduated from Dalhousie University with a degree in computer science and also earth science. That's my minor. But yeah, so that's kind of about what I studied and what I'm interested in. But more recently, I've been getting really passionate about just sharing different ideas in computer science and trying to spread some of the inspiration I feel when I work on these really amazing projects. So with that said, I am going to get started by sharing a presentation just to kind of show us what we'll be working on today. All right. So it looks like it's going through on my side. Let me know if you can see anything. The other day on Monday, we were having a few issues, like it didn't push through all the way. So you can't see it yet? Okay, I'm going to try a different kind of sharing in a few moments, just in case it's the internet. Can't see it yet? Still can't? All right, cool. I'm going to share my whole window then, instead of just the browser tab. Oh, okay, it did go through. Right, okay, it was the internet. Wow, that was just in time for me to stop sharing. So I'm just going to do that one more time. And hopefully, in about 15 seconds or so, you should see it pop up on your screen. Glitchy, but it was there. Yeah, it is an animated sort of GIF on the title card, so it might take a second to catch up. It was there for a second. Gone in a flash. Yeah. All right, good show. So it should be up there. Just a little context. We're doing a project called Dino Invasion. I'm around 25. I'm kind of old now. I took a lot of inspiration from the early retro games, and I played a lot of Space Invaders when I was a kid. Yeah, okay, nice. The resemblance is clear. And so I just sat down and I was like, wow, we should kind of or I should try to make a version of Space Invaders that is more simple so we can understand what goes into it and then use that so that we can build on it later and maybe make a fuller game. Is there anyone that still can't see it, Duncan? I saw that. Hopefully it's coming through for everybody. Or Gallica, yeah. Or Galaxian. There's a lot of versions. Okay, awesome. I'm glad. So yeah, this is kind of our finished product for today. We have around an hour and a half. If you want to go alongside with what we're doing, you can go on the Scratch website, but I'm just going to go through this presentation first, just so we can get a sense about the scope of this project. Like from the top, we're not going to just dive in and try and do it right away. We want to scope it out. We want to understand what goes into it. So first things first, again, not everyone here has used Scratch before, so we're going to take it from the top and really break down these concepts so that we all feel like this is for us, because that's one of my strongest beliefs. Computer science and programming is for everybody, and always want to make sure that's clear. So what is programming? It's just instructions for a computer. So computers don't really have thoughts of their own. I know sci-fi may tell us otherwise, but they really don't. They're a blank slate, and they do what we tell them to do. So everything you see on your computer or on your phone, even on your TV, was made by somebody. It was not made by a computer. I mean, there are some futuristic things where AI can be tricked into making certain kinds of content these days, but for all intents and purposes, we made everything that computers do. We write these instructions, and Scratch is just one way to do this. So here's an example of code, right? We're just going to break the seal for anybody that a piece of code before. Scratch is an awesome app where we can make programs, of course, and we can dream it, we can build it. If you have an idea in your head, you need to hold on to that idea and try and make it real, because programming will allow you to do that. So when we hit the start button, this is an always loop or a forever loop. Just switch to the next costume, make the color a little bit different, and then wait half of a second. And this is what happens. We have a full dance party, okay? So we can actually use a similar type of loop today to animate our dinosaurs, right? Like when they're moving around and having a little bit of action as they move down the screen, we're going to use a action loop that looks almost exactly like that without the color changing. So let's talk about sprites. So sprites are basically images that Scratch uses to make a program. We can add sprites using this little plus button, and they'll show up in our bottom right corner of the screen. So to make that entire project I showed you, we only need 3 sprites. The player, which is a spaceship, a laser beam, which stays with the spaceship waiting to be fired, and then the T-Rex, which is the enemy. So we need to think about what each of these sprites are going to do. Spaceship can move left and right, maybe when we hit the arrow keys, and it also fires laser beams, of course. And the laser beam needs to stay with the ship. The T-Rex is going to spawn at the top and is going to fall down and sort of attack us. So again, making a plan, rawr. We have these different ideas that we're sort of going to box into each sprite. The way Scratch works is that in each different sprite, we have different code. That means that inside the spaceship sprite, we're going to have code that makes us move left and right, and also keeps track of a few variables, such as, how many lives do we have? What's our score? And then in the other sprites, we'll keep track of different stuff. Like in the laser beam, we can configure that to fire when we hit the space bar, and the T-Rex will generate more, we call them clones. So we're only going to have 1 T-Rex, as I showed you before. There's just 1 there. But you're like, hey, Shane, I saw 8 at the top of the screen. That's because we're going to use clones to make more on top, and also respawn them later if they get defeated. And then sometimes they throw fireballs. Yeah, William, I see your hand. You can just drop your message in the chat. I'll get back to you. Or you can speak, whatever works. It's just a sneak preview. This is what's possible using these concepts we're going to use today. We make more dinosaurs, different kinds of projectile movement. So yeah, it's very exciting to just kind of start in a simple way and make sure the simple building blocks are all really strong, and then go from there. Thanks, Jarman. Yep, so at any time, like I have 2 screens here, so I'm just kind of watching the chat diligently. There's no laser beams in Scratch. That is an excellent point. So I'll also show us how to make our own sprites. And the laser beam that I'm using here is just a red box that I drew on a sprite. So without further ado, we can get started by opening Scratch. And I'm actually just going to copy this link and just drop it right in there for anybody that doesn't have it handy. I'll also point out, for anyone that doesn't have a Scratch account, at certain times throughout this project, I'd recommend just saving it to your computer. And the reason I say that is because when you have a Scratch account, it will autosave. But if you don't, it won't. So try to keep up on that and just make sure that, if there's a power outage, or you sneeze and your head hits the power button, that kind of stuff, you may lose your progress. So that also is worth mentioning. One moment, please. Yes, and so I'll take lots of breaks here. I know not everybody has 2 screens. But especially, you know, when you're presenting like myself, it's pretty handy to keep track of the chat. So that's why I have it set up. So without further ado, I'm going to open up Scratch and we'll take it from the top. So I'm just going to share my separate screen. I'm just using my laptop and I plugged in an old monitor that I got on Kijiji. So one moment. All right. So in about 10 to 15 seconds, the Scratch or my screen share should pop up. Can't see it yet? Okay, I'm just going to wait a little bit longer. Can't see it? That's okay. Just give it a few more seconds and hopefully it will load through. Still can't. Okay. If I learned anything from last time, the second I stop sharing my screen, it will pop up just for a split second. So I'm just going to be a little patient and make sure it's not going to come through before I try again. Still not, eh? Okay, one person got it, so maybe there'll be a chain reaction. Maybe not. Okay, thanks for the feedbacks, by the way, super helpful just to keep up to date on whether it's going through. Okay, yeah, I'm going to have to show this again and I'll try a different approach. So, oh, okay, another person got it. Patience is slowly being rewarded. I hope it pushes through for everybody else soon. Still a lot with no, that's okay. Okay, some more getting pushed through. It's nice to have an hour and a half because then we can kind of take our time. Again, if you're more comfortable sort of just watching and learning, all of this will be up on YouTube later so that you can just kind of go back, and I'll also share my own Scratch page so that you can see inside the project, remix it, whatever you want to do. It's all, it's for you guys. So definitely don't feel stressed out about catching every little detail at this time. This is mostly about just showing you what goes into making a project like this and how you can do it for yourself as well. All right, so I see a lot more people are in. Is there anybody that still can't see it? Okay, this is promising. Okay, one still can't. Sorry about that. I'll give it another minute. All right. Yeah, sorry about that, Rihanna. I think I will get a slow rolling start here just to do some things like setting up the sprites. Nothing too crazy yet, but we just want to sort of lay the foundation of our program, just in the interest of time. And of course, this will be up again, so I hope it does push through for everybody. But the internet is an unpredictable thing. So without further ado, yeah, here we are in Scratch. Just a quick little overview. On the left side of our screen, we have our library. These are all the code blocks that we can use to make programs. In the very bottom right, we have our Sprite menu. We start out with a cat sprite, and we can make more sprites by clicking this button. We can search a library of sprites that are pre-made, or we can make our own by painting here. We can also set up a new background. Maybe let's do that first. So let's just go to choose a backdrop. And then it loads up a ton of different options. I just want this to be fun to look at. I'm going to choose a space background by typing in space. And then there's a galaxy right here. So I'm just going to click on that, and now we have a better visual. We're not going to be using the cat as our sprite. We're going to be using a spaceship. So I'm just going to hit this trash can at the top right of this sprite, remove the cat, and then in the choose a sprite menu, I'm just going to click on this button. Up in the top left, I'm going to type in ship. And here we go, our rocket ship. Trusty rocket ship. That's looking awesome. I'm going to rename this sprite. So right now it's called rocket ship, which is true, but it's more than that. It's the player. So I'm going to call it player because that'll make it easier to read our code. Okay. So how's everybody feeling so far? We've set up a new background, which is optional, of course, and we've added a player sprite. Missed how you did that. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to do this one more time. So again, in the bottom right corner, when we click on choose a backdrop, we can select any type of background we want, and that's just to make it look nice. So you don't need to go with the galaxy like I did. You can do anything you like. And in the choose a sprite menu, left click on this. So you don't, well, yes. So this is designed as like kind of a walk along tutorial. So you're absolutely encouraged to follow along if you want to have this on your own computer. But if that's not where your comfort level is at and you want to just get exposure, watch along and soak it up like a sponge, I also encourage you to do that. Do what's right for you in terms of how you want to engage with this lesson. So again, just typing in ship in the Sprite search, and now we got a new brand, a rocket ship. Okay, so we also are going to need to make a dinosaur. So I'm going to add another sprite by pressing on the same button. Then we're going to type in T hyphen, or even Dino will also give you more options. I'm going to use the T-Rex because I just feel like they're, more menacing. I might feel bad if I was shooting at something a little too cute. So now we have our two sprites, and you're obviously, thinking that, hey, this is the wrong size, but we'll get to that. We're just adding the sprites right now. I'm also going to rename this from Dinosaur 4 to T-Rex. Like that. Giving things good names in code will always be a good thing to do. It'll make it easier to read and go back to. So we have two of the three sprites we're going to need. I'm going to add one more, but this time I'm going to press on the paint button. And this will bring me open to this screen. Again, this is a different screen. This is the costumes section. And every sprite has costumes, which are different versions of the same sprite. So when I hit the paint button, it makes an empty sprite, nothing there. So when I go to costumes, there's nothing there yet. And we can draw whatever we want. Oh, that's great. I'm glad that the screen share went through for you. So all we've done so far, again, is just adding some sprites. Since the screen just popped up, I did that down in the bottom right corner here. Choose a sprite, adding a rocket ship T-Rex, and now we are painting the sprite. So I'm going to choose this box selector and make no outline. This is it always defaults to having like an outline on your box. And so in the bottom left here, there's a strike through button, make no outline, and just choose color red or whatever you want. And you might be thinking, lost, okay, is there Are you on a screen you don't recognize there, Chase? Right now, I'm just going to draw a rectangle, kind of like that, and name it laser beam. How do you draw? So all I'm doing to draw is going down to this box in the costumes menu for a given sprite. So just to recap, I'm going to make another laser beam so that we can just see how we did that, okay? That's okay. Let's rewind. So to make a drawing on a sprite, in the very bottom right here, the Choose a Sprite button has different options above it. I'm going to go to the Paint option right there. Does everyone see that? When I click on the Paint button, it gives me an empty sprite with no costume yet. And this is kind of like where you do drawings, you can make your own images that you can use in a game. Where I'm going to hover above it one more time there, Chase. See in green in the bottom right, I'm hovering above the Paint option inside Choose a Sprite. It will make a new sprite that's empty when you click it. Okay. Awesome. So now that most of us are loaded into the costume designer, you can draw using the paintbrush if you want. You can erase, changing the size of how big your eraser is. Scratch also has good support for importing other images. If you had something that you really wanted to use in a game and you had permission to do so, you would be able to import or upload that picture into this same costume editor and add code to it. But for today, we're just drawing our own stuff. The way I made that laser beam was using the rectangle or the square draw tool. It usually starts with an outline like that looks like this. I clicked on the very bottom left of that window, the red strike through button, to say, hey, no outline. I want a plain red rectangle. Okay, so once you do that and you draw your little box, you can drag it over the center point and just kind of get it good to go. And from there, I also renamed it. So once I drew that, I went over here to the name of the sprite and typed in laser beam. Can the red thing be smaller? Absolutely. So inside of our code space in the looks section, there's things like set size here. I'm actually going to zoom in a little bit, try and make it pop up bigger. Can I do that? Yeah, there we go. When I hold things, it'll be enlarged for everybody. Can't see anything. Sorry to hear that. I think it takes, for some folks, up to 2 minutes for the screen share to push through. So hopefully that will come through for you very soon. And so this set size to percentage tool will allow us to make the laser smaller and more appropriately sized. Okay, so this is looking really good so far. In each of these sprites, we'll have different code. Is everybody sort of comfortable to get started on making our rocket ship move left and right, or are there any more questions before we get into the actual code? Cool. In the top right, because I'm logged in, there's a Save Now button. If you don't have the Save Now button because you don't have an account yet, File, Save to your computer will allow you to download the file so that you don't lose your progress. I'd recommend doing that maybe every 15 minutes or even 10 minutes if you want. How do you change the size of things? Let's get into it. So anytime we start the game, we need to start with the When Flag Clicked button. Here we have a green flag right above our stage on the top right. And that's how we get things started. We say when the flag is clicked, things happen. There are different ways to do movement in Scratch where using your keyboard, you're affecting change on the screen. My favorite way to do that is using a forever loop. This is called a loop. You can see this little spinny arrow on the bottom right corner. That's telling us that it will run down piece by piece, going step by step. And once it gets to the very end, it will start again. So the way you can think about a forever loop is it will always do those steps over and over and over. I pressed the flag and it didn't do anything. That's okay. So what we're doing right now is we're going to tell the program what to do when we click the flag button. So the flag button is like how we get it started. It's just how we get the ball rolling, but it won't do anything until we tell it to. It won't let you save. So when you went to File and Save to your computer just like this, it wouldn't let you save. Delete the tab to save, but also if I delete, it won't save. So when I click on the Save Now button, I get like a pop-up window that will show me different parts of my computer to save that file. It should be like an SB3 file. Yeah, I'm unsure why that might be. It's not doing that for me. Delete the tab to save. If it's like totally empty, there's a chance it has to do with that, but since we have added sprites, that's technically part of the game file and it should let you save it. It just asks if I want to leave the site. Definitely no. Yeah, and I have those too. Yeah. There you go. Yeah, that's a problem I'm not familiar with, Jacob. Yeah, I'm just going to proceed with this. It's all going to be on YouTube, so that, and also like my account here, Shane_supernova. You can just find that on Scratch, and there are saved copies of this entire project. So I'm going to proceed with getting our movement here. We need to use a conditional statement. This says, if something, then do another thing. So we're adding a condition to our code, and we're going to say, if we press a certain button, then we want to move. So to press a button, we go to sensing. We're sensing something that's happening by input. When we go down here, there's key button pressed. And here are all the letters on your keyboard, all the numbers on your keyboard, and the arrow keys, of course. So I'm going to say if left arrow pressed, like that, then something. There's also a nice thing we can do here. If we don't want to drag and click and click and click, there's something called duplicate in Scratch, which just means make a copy of a code. So I'm going to right click on this. And the first option here after right clicking says duplicate. And then when I do that, it makes another one just like that. So we have one for left arrow, and the second one I'm going to change to right arrow. And both of these are going to go inside the forever loop. So now when we click the flag, it's always going to be checking if we're pressing these buttons. Anytime we want to set up motion, we're moving around, we go to the motion tab, and then we can choose which direction we go. Move 10 steps will move in the direction that we're currently pointing. And this is a changeable down here. So to avoid that, I'm going to instead use the change X by block. X is the left and right. X is like the horizon. And Y is Y to sky. It goes up and down. So changing X is like left and right. The positive direction is to the right, and the negative direction is to the left. So now that I've added this code, I hit the start button, I should be able to move my character left and right. And just to again remind us why the forever loop is here. If I detach the forever loop and I add this if right after the when flag clicked without the forever loop and I click start, I try and move, nothing will happen. That's because it checks once. It checks, hey, are you moving left? No. Are you pressing right? No. And then it ends. And it ends in less than a fraction of a second. So that's why we need to use the forever loop, so that we're always checking whether or not we're moving. Okay, so again, this doesn't look really like a polished game right now. We have a ton of big sprites. Let's make things look better. Another thing I'll point out is that we also can have more than one when flag clicked button, and they'll all run at the same time. That can be really useful because this forever loop is just going to be our like movement block. It's going to take care of moving left and right, but then we can have another space over here to do other things. We want to set up our initial position and also make us smaller, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to looks and set size. If you can't move right yet, make sure that after duplicating, you change key left arrow to key right arrow. How do you put 5 blank? If you could explain the question a bit more for 5 blank. So we're going to set the size smaller and also decide where our player wants to start. Probably like right there is fine. You can just drag it on the screen. And you'll notice that in the bottom right, there is an X and Y number for each. And that shows us where we are on the screen. So that when we go to the motion tab, those two numbers are being updated inside there. The second change X thing, and I can't move right. Oh, I see. So in the first section here, I have a -5 to go left. And in the second one, I have a +5. So the way Scratch works is that when we move negative X, we're moving to the left, and then positive X is going to the right. Oh, I see. It's not moving my character, it's moving my laser. So that means that you have your laser beam selected and that you put your code in there, which is fine. Try this. If you left click on your block and on your keyboard, holding down Control and C, and then going to a different sprite and hitting Control and V, it should paste it right down there. So I'm just going to kind of write that in the chat. Control and C is copy. Control V is paste. So you can use that to basically move code blocks between different sprites. All right. And then be sure to delete it from the other sprite once you have done that. Okay, so let's get a little bit more customization for our starting position. We also want to use this go-to block for the rocket ship. I like to start X as 0 because that's dead center. And then the Y, it says my rocket ship is right now at -147. And so I'm going to use that as my second coordinate so that no matter where my rocket ship is, when I hit the start button, it's going to go right to the correct spot. The last thing I want to do here is just add a quick forever loop and then make an animation here for the rocket ship. The way we do animation is just a little throwback to that presentation. In the looks section, we use the next costume block. Thanks, Jarman. Yeah, that's another great way to do it without the keyboard. Oh yeah, sorry, just about copying things. When you click and you can drag things to a different sprite and then it copies it right over there. That's shows my my default setting in my brain that I'm just like, oh, Control C, Control V, everything. But that's another really awesome way to move things around is just by dragging them into different sprites. Right arrow to move the center and not anywhere else. So I'll just mention, just make sure that looking really closely that each of these things is exactly the way I have it for that error, because this is sort of a build pattern. Whenever you do this kind of code exactly, it will always have the same outcome. So in this situation, it is, hey, okay, perhaps try the stop button and then start again. I know you've probably tried that already. Wow, I'm looking like a disco wheel because I haven't added a wait statement yet in my forever loop for the next costume. But so still not working when I use right arrow, center, anywhere else. Is your go-to statement inside a forever loop? If you have go to 0 and Y, is that like inside a forever loop? Because then it would just repeatedly put you in the middle. So what I've done here is I've added a little wait statement. Yeah, it should be spinning. That's awesome. Inside the control section in orange on the left, there's a wait statement, and you can wait for any amount of time after you make a costume switch, and it will animate your player. Okay. So for now, we also need to do one more thing for rocket ship, but we'll come back to that. Yeah, I can absolutely take it easy on the pace here. If it would be of help to you, by going to my Scratch page, you can also see the working code directly, and it will be of very similar. It would be very similar to exactly what we're doing now. And I just think that would be like a more effective way to kind of keep it on a tab in your computer, because I won't be able to keep my screen on what's needed for everybody at the same time as I go through this tutorial. So I wanted to make sure there was another way that you can check out. You can check out the actual code. I should drop that right in the chat here. So by doing that, you can see kind of a glimpse into the future, and also compare any issues you're having as we go. So now I want to kind of get started on the laser beam. Oh, I see some hands. Oh, and William also with a hand. Did I get to that? Yeah, thanks for raising your hands. It's really helpful. I am trying to hit every comment that's dropped in the chat, however, so it will be quicker for me to get back to you if you just drop your questions right away. How to use the flag? Absolutely. So in the events section in yellow, that's like any big event that happens, including pressing the start button. At the very top of the events section, there's a when green flag clicked button that makes it so that whenever we hit the green flag, everything that's connected to that first block will happen in order. So that's always how we get it started. We just use the green flag clicked button and then add stuff underneath it. So let's talk about the laser beam. We're going to need to add a few different features to the laser beam to make it behave in the way we expect it to. And so, why is it going up? My events just got all deleted when I went to motion. When you switch sprites, it will be empty. It may look like things are deleted, but really they're just in a different section of code. Where the laser beam, I can't find it in the sprite. So the way we made the laser beam is just a red rectangle. I'm going to run that back just to show how that goes. To make a laser beam, you can also use, a piece of fruit. You can use anything that's preloaded there if you're more comfortable doing that. It's just to keep on theme with the space that I did this. But in the paint section of choose a sprite, by clicking on that, it makes a new sprite that has empty. And then when I click on the box here, choosing no outline, I can draw a red box. And I just made mine kind of like a rectangle, and then I just named it laser beam. That's kind of all I did there. So you're correct, you won't find the laser beam in the sprite menu, but that is the process I did. Do you know how to get the forever loop or how to start moving? Okay, so the forever loop is inside the control section in orange. I'm sorry about that, Joshua. So just to be sure, I know you said it is exactly the same. It's one of those things about code, though. If I copy and pasted this onto another computer, I know it would behave the same. So that's sort of my perspective on that. Events all got deleted. So as a check, also Control Z is undo. So like if I were to delete something and then hit Control Z, it will bring it back. Make sure that that has if you're sure it was deleted. Can I copy and paste yours on your game? Yeah, sure. So like the link I dropped just above for my projects page, you can absolutely just go in there, click see inside, and it will show you everything I'm going to get through, which is also why I want to keep going to make sure that we see exactly what goes into making it. Copy paste is Control C and Control V. I wish I could have a sticky on the thing just to keep that up there. In the laser beam, we're going to need another when flag clicked button. So right now it's totally the wrong size and it's not where we need it to be. How do I get all that's on your screen? All this here? By drag and dropping each section of the menu. So it's color coded. The yellow start blocks are in the event section here. The orange blocks are in the control section. So we have the forever loop in control. We also have the if then block from control. In the sensing category, we can pick up things like button presses. Yeah, 100%. Thanks, Jarman. Yeah, so you can't copy paste it between tabs. It only works inside the same tab. But if you click on Remix, you can totally change things or mess around. And I encourage you to do so. When the flag is clicked, I want to change the size, but also make it go to the location of the spaceship. In the looks section, I'm going to switch it down to 35%. If it still looks too big, you can just make it more or less of this percentage. So now it looks kind of more reasonably sized. And then forever, let's think about this. The laser beam is always on our ship. We need to always go to the location of the ship. And in the motion category, there's a piece of code that does just that. We can go to rocket ship or go to any sprite. You can even go to a random position or your mouse pointer as well. So just to try that out, when I hit the start button now, see how my laser beam is just hugging to my rocket ship? That's all that this block of code is doing. And I found that inside the control section using another forever loop. We're going to use tons of forever loops and also a go to block in the motion section. Go to rocket ship right there. Yep, so you won't be able to copy and paste from my game directly, but be sure to click on the remix button and it will open up the game in an editable way. And from there, you can make adjustments. It's sort of the best that Scratch has to offer. Okay, thank you so much for bringing up your question. So the way I would fix that is by going to the costume section of Laserbeam. So now that we have Laserbeam selected, inside the costume section, left click, or using the pointer button here, the pointer mouse, you can left click on this Laserbeam and drag it around a little bit. And so you see how it's offset for me now, because I moved it over. There's a little plus button right in the middle, and I'm going to drag that on top and it will lock in place right on the center point, and then that should fix your problem. And again, it's totally up to you folks, however you want to ask questions. The remix button, okay. So, yes, so if you don't have a Scratch account, then I'm unsure if you can remix it exactly, but you can definitely click on See Inside. And Jarman will be here to bounce some of your questions so that I can also proceed with creating a projectile here. Get the laser beam to go into place. You have a Scratch account. Okay. So The other thing we want to keep in mind is that this laser beam shouldn't be visible. Whenever you press on the space bar, it will fire a laser, but until then we don't want to see it. So let's go to the look section and drag a hide statement right on there. So now it doesn't look like there's anything there. When I move left and right and I'm left clicking over and over, you can see that the laser beam is still following my rocket ship. Okay. So the last thing we'll need to do in this section of the code for laser beam is to make it so that when we're pressing the space bar, a laser will go up. Okay? Don't know how to make anything move. So the way you make an enemy is by going to choose a sprite here, and just left clicking on choose a sprite in the bottom right will allow you to choose a dinosaur or anything you like for your enemy. So to make things move, you always use forever loops, and you find forever loops in the control section, third one down. And then you can add a motion block inside the forever loop that you attach to the when flag clicked, so that forever you're having a motion that is occurring. Okay, so I mentioned earlier that you're allowed to have 2 different blocks that have a when flag clicked. This is going to be really helpful in this situation. So I'm going to use another forever loop to always be checking if I hit the space bar. I'm just using the space bar for me. You can use any button you want. A motion block is found on the very top left of the screen in blue. And these are going to be all of the moving around kind of blocks. So for the laser beam, we need to think, what happens if we press the space bar? Anytime we're pressing a button, think sensing. Going to the sensing category just underneath control. So we're going to say, okay, something is going to happen when we press the space bar. And anytime we want to say, okay, if this, then something should happen, we also need to use an if-then statement. So a lot of the language and the way we think about code in English has a translation that we can make in code. And again, if it's your first experience with Scratch, I don't necessarily think the way the code is laid out is easy to search. There's a lot of sort of reading like, oh, I'm scrolling, where is something? So if you're finding that that's the case and it's kind of overwhelming to go through all these different things, deep breaths, it's okay. There's a lot to go through here and we're not going to use all of it, not even close. It's probably one of my, comments about Scratch. One of the things I think they could do better is having a little search bar or a way to find things in a more natural way. So, just be patient. And if you're finding it overwhelming, then it's always okay to sort of just listen and see how things go and go back to it at another time. So right here, inside the laser beam, I have a statement that says, if I hit the space bar, then something should happen. I'm going to make a clone. Inside the control section, we can do something called cloning or duplicating. It's like if there's a version of me that I'm sitting in my chair, and then with code I say, make a clone of Shane, then right over top of me, there's going to be a second Shane. And then I can tell that clone to do something else. And so in Scratch, that's going to be how we do a lot of different things, like throwing projectiles or making more enemies, is we're going to use clones to do that. So in the very, very bottom of the control section, there's 3 clone blocks, and we're going to need all 3 by the time we're done. The first one I want to use is create clone of myself, okay? So whenever I press the spacebar, we're going to create a clone. And I don't want to be able to just hold spacebar and fire like nonstop lasers. So in the control section, I'm also going to make it wait for a small amount of time. Wait 1 second, just so there's a 1 second delay. Just to revisit this, all I've done here is I've gone to the control section I grabbed a forever loop. I'm actually just going to move over a little bit to repeat this process. I used a forever loop, then an if-then statement inside the forever loop like that. And also in control, near the bottom, I said, create a clone of myself, okay? Just like that. And you can add delay to your code. You can make it wait a little bit at the very top by saying wait 1 second. And so that's sort of the strategy we're going to use to make projectiles in Scratch. So with that said, we need to tell clones to do something. Right now, whenever I press spacebar, it's going to make a clone and they're not going to do anything. They're not even going to be visible because we made them hidden before. So near the bottom of control, we have one called when I start as clone. And that's going to tell Scratch, hey, what happens to these clones you're making? Well, we want them to be visible. We want to show them in the looks section so we can see them. And then we want them to move up the screen, just at a steady rate moving upwards. And to do that, you guessed it, we're going to use a forever loop. Forevers are really helpful just for doing something. Update music, cool. Yeah, and there's tons more that we're not going to be able to get into today just for time limits. But at any place in your code, like if you're firing, you're pressing spacebar, you can add a sound, right? You can add like a popping noise or anything you want to make it much more immersive, and even background music if you want, like Duncan was saying. So when I start as a clone, I want to move up the screen. So I'm going to change Y by a certain number. Remembering that Y to sky, we're going up and down with Y. When we make a positive number for Y, it's going to go up. So let's just try this out. We have a clone that's being made here, and then it's going to make that clone visible. It's going to show it, and then it's going to move up the screen forever. Okay, so now that I'm moving left and right, and whenever I hit spacebar, it's creating a laser that's going straight up. Okay, so that's pretty exciting. We have a functioning projectile, but you may notice, I'm going to enlarge this really quick. What's that? That's not a funny business. There's some leftovers up there, you know? If I fire like a few thousand lasers, my game is going to start having problems because there's no cleanup. They're all still up there. They're waiting for something to happen. So yeah, nice. We're just going step by step to try and understand what are good design practices. Laser won't shoot. Okay, so just to review, we have if the space bar is pressed, we're making a clone. Be sure to show it if you hit it before. Okay, so we're going to need all of this code that I'm kind of hiding the stuff on the left because it's not the laser firing code. That's just some setup stuff. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, be sure to collaborate. I know it's difficult in the digital setting. Normally you would kind of be able to look over at someone else's screen and say, oh, it's that way. So, thanks for your patience and understanding with the process. But if you copy this exactly. Yeah, great question about the laser being visible. So let's just explore what the show and hide blocks really do. This is called the hide block, and it's the same thing as clicking on this eyeball in the bottom right corner. Okay, so you're showing or hiding a sprite. And to do that with code, we use the show and hide block. So if you see it like this, when the flag is clicked, be sure to go to the looks section, and then near the bottom, there's show and hide. And I'm just going to hide it, right? So when it's waiting to be fired, it's just going to be hidden. It's going to be in the background, right? But then when we hit the space bar, it's going to make the clone, right? And this is what happens to a clone. The clone is duplicated, and then we move on, and this piece of code never talks about that clone again. The clone is entirely set up by this block over here when I start as a clone. Again, this is all color-coded. In the control section at the very bottom, we have the when I start as clone button. We have the create clone of myself button. so that when we start as a clone, it's going to show it. And then forever, we're changing y by 10. But as I kind of mentioned before, we have that issue with the lasers piling up on top and not being able to be cleaned up. To fix that, I'm going to use an if-then statement. Welcome. We're going to use an if-then statement. And again, anytime we touch the edge of a screen, we touch a different sprite, we think sensing, right? So not only are we using sensing for keyboard inputs, we can also use the sensing category for when a sprite touches another sprite. So I'm going to head back right over there. And at the very top, there's a touching statement. And I'm going to say, hey, if you're touching the edge, that means if you touch the edge of the screen at any point, delete the clone. Get it out of here. We don't need it anymore because it's going to pile up and it's going to make our game really slow if we don't do this. And at the very bottom of control, there's delete this clone. I'm just going to drag that over. And you'll notice that we've actually used all three of the clone blocks so far. We made a clone here. We said, hey, when a clone is made, do this stuff. And then when the clone touches the edge, get rid of it. So now we have a setup where these lasers are going to actually remove themselves from the game when they touch the edge of the screen. And that's awesome. So again, little chunk of code here, but what we've achieved is making a functional laser. And then in other sprites, like the T-Rex, we're going to be able to say, hey, if we're touching a laser, then something. Maybe delete this dinosaur, give us points, that kind of stuff. Yeah, I see you see your hand? I see you, Mary Kate. If you have a question, you can drop it in the chat. Sorry about that, Savannah. If you have any kind of specific questions, I'm definitely more able to respond to those kinds of things. All we've done here is in the laser beam section, made it so that when we press the space bar, the laser goes to the top of the screen. And that's this block of code right here. The rocket ship to spin, great question. So appearances matter, right? Like we want to have a game that's fun to look at. And I think that animating things is a big part of that. So when we go to the rocket ship, this little block of code right here that I'm highlighting achieves animation. We go to the next costume, and then we wait for 0.5 seconds, which is half of 1 second. You can make this delay 0 seconds, and then you spin like a wild rocket ship. But I think 0.5 seconds is pretty reasonable, just to make it look nice. Yes, absolutely. I'm going to try and sort of compress this together a little bit so that you can see it all, hopefully. Okay, that's not bad. How do you make it move? Is that the animation or the, which part? It gets stuck in the middle of the screen. Chase, was there an issue with the laser beam or another part? Okay. Oh, you can't unmute yourself. I see. So in Collaborate, there's a My Settings section. You need to go to the bottom right. There's like a gear, like a cog, and there's some settings there. If your microphone isn't set up in a way that works for, oh, okay, I see. I don't think you can chat on audio, unfortunately. Sorry, I didn't know that right away. You won't move your character. Oh, I see. So when you start the game, your character can't move left or right, or it's not animating. So this forever loop right here spins. And then because of this section here, we have left and right motion. And one more time here, I'm just going to drop this link here in the chat so that if you go to, this will have more content, but it will show you sort of the exact steps so that when I go away from this page, you can compare your work to the project page itself. Okay, so again, we have lasers going to the top, and now we need to kind of get onto the main feature. We have this dinosaur that's waiting to be managed. So I'm excited to get to that part. It's definitely what brings this project to life for sure. Okay. One moment, please. Okay, so in the T-Rex section, we're going to need another when flag clicked button. So now we're making the code to manage our T-Rex. First thing we want to do, and this is it's kind of funny. It may not make a lot of sense at first, but we actually want to hide our dinosaur. The idea behind this is we have a hidden dinosaur in the background that will make clones that we see on the top of the screen. And that will always be our original copy. So I'm going to for the laser beam, yeah. There's a way to share images. That would be pretty helpful. Last thing for laser beam was, of course, changing Y by 10. If touching edge, then delete this clone. So we're going to go to our starting position. I'm going to say go to -250 and I think just 125, sorry. So when I hit the start button and I just highlight the T-Rex, you can see that it's kind of up in the top corner. So from there, I'm going to create copies of the dinosaur that are going to go across the screen. Another thing we'll do is to set the rotation style to left and right. That's also in the motion section. Cat is stuck on my coding screen. I'm not sure I understand the last question. Is it that you have your cat as your player, and then if you can't see the code, you can always highlight different sprites by left clicking on the bottom right section. So hopefully that will shake things up. So now that we have this initial position, I also want to make the size a little bit more reasonable. Also setting the size to 35%. 35 is kind of a good middle ground. Makes it look a good height. Okay. And so again, in the project page that I shared, I used variables and some other types of Scratch items to make it so that, like when all the enemies pass, they respawn and that kind of stuff. For today, we have around 20 minutes remaining. I definitely want to make them spawn and make them give you points when you hit them. But then from there, we can sort of build on that using that reference material for the future. Kind of stuck on the coding screen. Oh, I see. So if you want the coding screen to, or sorry, if you want the cat to totally be removed, then And if you already have a rocket ship, you have a T-Rex and a laser beam, and you're like, get the cat out of here, you'll find the cat in the bottom right, and there's a little trash can at the top right of the sprite. I'm actually just going to do something. Don't mind me. This is just an extra thing before I give advice. I want to see if I can undo something. Yeah, so Control Z doesn't work on deletion of sprites. So do be careful if you're hitting the trash can. And if you haven't saved in a while, I encourage you to do that. I know there was an issue with the browser not letting one participant save, and but this is I just always recommend it because it's always a shame when you need to redo things. So I'm just going to use a repeat block. This is kind of like a forever loop, and it's going to do a loop a certain number of times instead of just on and on and on forever. We're going to have 8 dinosaurs, so we're going to repeat this 8 times. And then I'm just going to create a clone of myself. But not before changing. When I hit save, it just lets me want to save the site. That's a really unusual sort of error. I didn't realize that was a problem. I've never had that issue myself, so I apologize for that. My cat is where your dinosaur is. Okay, so if your cat is your player, be sure that there is a block like this blue one right here. Go to x0 and y as like minus 145 or something like that. And it will basically make it so that whenever you start the game, you go back to that starting position at the very bottom. That's definitely my recommendation for that. So if your cat is a player, yeah, okay, sorry, I didn't understand right away. Apologize. I'm going to change the X position by a little bit each time, okay? So this is like a trick I'm going to use to basically make a little offset so that each time a clone spawns, it will go to a different location, so they don't just all stack on top of itself. Yeah, to make the T-Rex open its mouth, you're just going to use this design pattern for animation. You're going to say, hey, when the flag is clicked, forever, I want to go to looks and say, hey, next costume, I want it to animate. And then just give it a slight delay. Wait for 0.5 seconds. And this is an animation block. It will make it so that whenever the flag is clicked, it will animate. Save it and says leave site. We're going to try something really quickly on a separate tab. Try and investigate this problem. So I'm using Windows. That might be some helpful context. And even when I open a private browser, meaning that I'm not logged in, I just like made a quick project and tried to save it, and it still recommends the file system. So yeah, my apologies there. I know that some people definitely can save, but for those that can't, I apologize. I hope that we can look into that problem more closely and figure out why that's happening. Sounds good. Yeah, if you need to stand up and stretch your legs or look outside, then I encourage you to do so. Yeah, so the X value is 0, and then the second one I would say like minus 145. Another way you can do that is just by dragging your player wherever you want and taking a quick look in this Y section in the bottom right, and it will update to show you where it's gone. So if you like where it is, you want it to be a specific spot, copy and paste this number, or just rewrite it into this field here, and you will go to that spot when you start the game. So now we have animation here from before. I'm going to just kind of slip that out of the way so that we don't have, worry about that too much, because we need to do some stuff with clones. For each clone that spawns, we always need to have a when I start as clone block. And then in looks, I say, hey, show the T-Rex. So let's just see what happens there. Wow, look at that. It just made them all right away. So as you can see, the original is animating, but the clones are not. The way I can fix that is by actually just removing this when flag start block and adding another when I start as clone block here. Yeah, sorry I didn't catch that right away. Basically, you can also have more than one when I start as clone blocks, and they'll all run at the same time. So that when I hit this, now we have some animation for all of the dinosaurs. I'm just going to leave this code on the screen, and if you have any specific questions about what we've done so far in terms of the T-Rex setup, then let me know. Undo something. Yeah, I'm going to wait, don't worry. To undo, I would press Control and Z on your keyboard. So the Control button is usually at the very bottom left, and then the Z button also near the bottom left together. If you have like a Mac computer, you may not have a control key, in which case I have too many clones. Yeah, I know the feeling. I would say, I'm just gonna write this out one more time. Windows, and then Command and Z is undo on a Mac computer. Welcome. So yeah, basically now we have this setup. Again, I'm just sort of being an interest of time. I want to show you how to like do clone setups. It's a lot to get into. This is definitely a big project to lead with today, but I mostly just wanted to show everybody sort of the things that go into making a game that after a while can get really complex and actually challenge you to the point where you're going to lose the game. I mean, I grew up playing video games, and I really enjoy a video game that can just lead me to think about games. I'm like, well, I'd like to come back to it and maybe be challenged by that game. So that's kind of why we're doing so many enemies and why there's going to be options for making the game harder as well. So when I start this clone, we need to figure out a way to make these go down. Oh, I'm glad I'm back. Maybe there's a little glitch in my connection. It's okay if yeah, nice. Well, just about the not understanding thing. It's totally okay if this is it feels overwhelming. I'm aware that it's a big project, and it's in terms of getting a first introduction to Scratch. I think it is a big project. So, I so much respect and appreciation for everybody here that wanted to tune in. I think this is a great starting place for other kinds of games, and which is why I wanted to share it with you today. But no stress. This is totally, it's not for marks. It's just for fun. So what block do I use to start them both at the exact same time? So all you need to do to do two things at the same time is you need to use two when flags start buttons, or blocks, I mean, or two when I start as clone buttons. So what's going on here? When I start as a clone twice, well, anytime a clone is made on the top, these both run at the same time. And the same concept applies for flag start. They'll both run at the same time. They're going off the screen. Okay, so basically, all that means is that they're spawning too far off the screen. One thing you could try is in the change X by section here, you can make that a lesser value, like 40 instead of 54, and then they'll spawn closer to this side. So just play around with this number and see if it makes for a better setup position for you. So let's make these clones move. I'm going to introduce something called a variable. So this variable is going to be called clone ID. We're going to use this variable to keep track of which clone is which, because right now we have no way to know. When we set it up, they're all clones. We have no idea how to choose one, for example. So all I'm going to do here, I'm just deleting that variable. We don't need it. This variable section. I'm sorry, William. If there are any specific questions I can help with, do let me know. We have about 10 minutes left. Before I actually get into variables, I want to keep it simple. Let's make it so that when a clone touches a laser beam, we get some points. So inside a forever loop, we're always going to be checking if we're touching a laser beam. So to do that, forever loop, then an if-then block as well. We're going to use this to say, hey, if this sprite is touching a laser beam, then something should happen. Anytime there's sprites touching sprites or anything like that, we think, hey, that's the sensing category. We're going to sense whether we're touching another sprite. So if we're touching a laser beam, then we want to, let's just start with deleting this clone. We don't even need to keep track of score right now. Let's see if that works. So now we have dinosaurs and I shoot these lasers. The lasers will erase the T-Rexes, just like that. It doesn't really matter which side you start the clones. If I had started the T-Rexes from the right, I would just need to add an X value here in the other direction by saying minus 54. But you started the same as me. I started on the left side. See, oh, okay, sorry. Yeah, so basically our sprite has actually moved over because of our updates. That's okay. It's no issue. So yeah, with these pieces together here, we're making an interactive experience where we can shoot at enemies, and then when they touch a laser beam, then something happens. I want to use something to keep track of when to erase a laser beam. So to do that, I'm basically going to go to the events section. And say when I receive, okay, I can't see my laser sprite. What did I do? So the laser sprite should be invisible at first. And then whenever we hit the space bar, it will go visible. Okay, so I'm actually just going to slow it right down. It's totally fine if we don't add those extra details today, but let's make sure that what we've done so far, we're sort of feeling good about. Is there any page that I should go to? Okay, stuck in the middle of the screen. So I'm going to go back to the laser beam section here and say, change Y by 10. Is there a chance that instead of having a forever loop here, Chase, it's a repeat numbered loop? Because if I repeated this like 10 times and then stopped, it would stop moving in the middle. Dino to disappear. So to get the dino to disappear, basically we need this little forever loop here. Say, when I start as a clone, the forever loop is to always check. Remember, if I don't have this forever loop and I just have it like this, it will check once and then it will never check again. So that's what the forever loop is for, is to always check if we're touching that laser beam. So again, we're inside T-Rex sprite, and we're saying forever, check. If we're touching the laser beam, then just delete the clone. And this is also the section where you could say, add points if we're touching the laser beam. And you can do that using variables. But I'm not going to do that right now because there are still some more questions to get into. Didn't hear? Oh, that's okay. So for you, Chase, just make sure that this is a forever loop going up, okay? If you maybe used a repeat loop, and I just sort of demonstrated what that would look like, I'll change this right back for anybody taking this down. And then I hit the space bar, it would stop moving like that because it's only moving a few times and then stopping after 10 motions. That's one thing to maybe check because a forever loop will always move up with Y changing by 10. so that that will happen instead. T-Rex doesn't disappear. Okay, so if it's touching the laser beam, then be sure to delete this clone. If it was just like that, then it would touch the T-Rex, but this delete this clone button is what is actually making it erase. Is there any questions I have? You did write that, okay. And the T-Rex is not disappearing. Is it perhaps that there's no forever loop? If you have it like this, then the T-Rex won't disappear. Sure, there's a forever loop wrapped around the if statement so that it's always checking. And hopefully that will work. Found my error when I had that when flag clicked instead of when I started to clone. Awesome catch there. Definitely there's a difference. When the flag is clicked, I'm pressing this button. When I start as clone, that's something that happens inside the code. Always do forever loop. Thinking. Okay. Laser beam. Okay. Hey, that's awesome. Nice job. Again, coding is about patience. I can't tell you folks just how many times I've stared at my code and it won't work. And trying things, breaking things, fixing things, and it is a process. So your patience is absolutely rewarded in this kind of activity where just keeping calm and being like, hey, it's not supposed to work right away. It's supposed to be a process. So thanks for coming on this journey with me today. I've had a lot of fun. I think this is a super awesome introduction to clones in Scratch, and it really shows a lot of different things, like how to fire a laser or a projectile, and how to make enemies. And even in the future, there will be other parts of this code that you can add on to that will have different effects. And how do they shoot you? So this is definitely another topic. I was a little misleading at the beginning. I said there's only 3 sprites. So really quickly, I'm going to show you folks how to make a projectile with a T-Rex. This is going to be something that, again, I will highly recommend you just take a look at on another, when you have a good chance to do so. I'm not tuning out quite yet. I'll just show you a few more things. But again, on this project page, it has working dinosaur projectiles, but I'll just explain how to do that really quickly. And I'll just ask that, since there's only a few minutes, I have to go a little bit quickly. There's a trick in Scratch where you can make a clone. Whoa, it's deep. But the way we're going to handle that is by making a variable, and I'm going to call it is projectile ? Okay, and I'm going to say it's for this sprite only. Can you show the laser? Yeah, absolutely. Just going to do this. Is there something specific I can answer just with words, Chase, or you just want to make sure you have it down exactly as you want it to be? May not have time to get to the T-Rex projectiles, but it basically uses a variable to keep track of whether or not a new clone is or is not a variable, or is not a projectile, I meant. I'm just going to go back here really quick. And again, please check out the project page. My laser getting stuck in the center of the screen. Check out the project page and look at those loops. Make sure it's the same, and it should go to the top of the screen. To make this projectile, I'm going to say, when I start as a clone, forever, I'm going to wait for a certain amount of time. That's kind of random, you don't want to be able to predict how often this is coming. And again, this is all going to be on YouTube, so I'll ask that you just hold your questions about slowing down. You can always rewind if you need to. I'm going to wait a certain amount of time, and then this is the trick. I'm going to make a clone inside a clone, right? But the thing that I'm also going to do is I'm going to set is projectile to 1. So 1 is true. It's like it is a projectile. And then I'm going to set it back to 0 right after I make that clone, so that in effect, only the clones of clones have this special variable that we're keeping track of. And the last thing I'll do is sort of just make sure it's set to 0 at the start of our program, okay? So when I do this, and it says that this is a special variable, I'm going to say, okay, if this variable is equal to 1 or 0, I can do different things inside my clone statements. So for these sections here, I know it's about time, so I don't think I'll have time to fully show this, but this is very much the idea of how you can make clones make projectiles. You need to sort of wrap everything in this check to say, okay, only the dinosaurs have this, and then only projectiles have the other thing. It's equal to 0, that's fine. Equal to 0, good. And yes, that's good as well. And then so we just need one more here and say, okay, if this is a projectile, then I basically want to move down the screen. I'm going to change y by a certain value, maybe -5. Let's just take a look at what happens here. So it's going to wait a random amount of time between 1 and 5. And then, it should be forever change y by -5. Yeah, there we go. And now at random points in time, there will be more clones being made of these T-Rexes, and you can change the costume to be a fireball or whatever you want. So that was a lot of info. Again, thank you so much for your attention and your patience with the whole process of this tutorial. Be sure to check out those project pages if you want to remix or do other things. And yeah, this is what I love to do. It's what I love to talk about. So, I really appreciate the audience and your patience with the whole thing. So yeah, stay safe out there, everybody. And I hope to see you all again sometime very soon.